Most of you are probably aware that the federal as well as state and local government information technology projects are too often plagued by cost overruns, schedule delays, and technical deficiencies. It's been my experience that a major contributing factor is that both government and industry project managers continue to make the same mistakes as previous PMs. And while formal Program Management Institute or PMI training is invaluable, once PMs get thrown into their first project or as they advance in their careers, most of this knowledge falls by the wayside. Plus, some of the fundamentals don't directly translate to government arena. What seems to be missing is an institutional sharing of actual hands-on experience, the what to do and what not to do based on previous project successes and failures. So today I'd like to discuss 5 problems I've observed as well as how to effectively deal with them. These are just a few of the lessons from my latest book, The Essential Guide to Managing a Government Project, which was published by the Government Freelance Exchange or govflex.com. My favorite quote about the importance of project clarity is by Lily Tomlin, who said, "I've always wanted to be somebody, but I see now I should have been more specific." This applies to so many aspects of project management. All IT, both hardware and software projects, should but don't always start with a solid set of well-written technical and operational requirements that clearly define what the end users want. A valuable lesson for me was if it can't be verified by testing or inspection, then it isn't specific enough. As an example, I once reviewed a specification requirement from a he who shall not be named agency that does air traffic control that stated, "The maintenance computer console shall be user-friendly." I was unable to get them to be more specific. During acceptance testing a year later, the system end user had their largest maintenance technician try to sit at the console, but his legs didn't fit under the keyboard. So they rejected the system as being user unfriendly. I also want to emphasize how important it is to get every agreement in writing. As a young PM, I took over the management of an Army development project. At the last minute, the government replaced the quality assurance inspector. This new person decided the requirement for documentation of all subsystems had to be military standard, and forced us to spend about $400,000 in documentation changes. Regarding the importance of acceptance criteria, I thought it was revealing that in the 2021 GitLab Global DevSecOps Survey, for the 3rd year in a row, respondents pointed to testing as the primary reason for schedule delays. On the other hand, of the nearly 4,300 survey respondents, 60% are releasing code 2 times faster than ever before. Hopefully, automation will take up some of the testing slack. But I'd also recommend spending sufficient time with your project experts to make sure you understand how the government will test whether your deliverable, for instance, a desktop application, meets their requirements, and that the acceptance criteria are documented. If it's not clear, have a technical interchange meeting to nail this down. It doesn't make sense to rush to deliver a solution if your client won't or can't use it. By the way, you might be surprised how many PMs I've coached haven't actually read their entire contract, including the attachments and special clauses. Talk about a recipe for disaster. And my questions about the cost risk associated with different contract types, especially fixed price, and their understanding of standard pricing terminology is usually met with silence. This is easily remedied by taking the time to read every shall and will statement in the contract and statement of work, as well as any special clauses and addendums. Remember that shall means you have to do it, and will means the government or the customer is responsible. The proposal team will usually have prepared a requirements traceability matrix that can help with this task. Project acceptance testing is too late to discover unfulfilled contract requirements. Speaking of proposal teams, Contractor PMs need to go out of their way to not only read all of the proposal, but also talk to the primary proposal capture and business development staff. Scheduler time management is the process of recording and controlling time spent by the staff on the project. However, a common problem I've observed over and over again are projects that have delivery deadlines that even with superhuman efforts can't be met. The options in this situation are renegotiate the deadline or project delay, employ additional resources or increase the cost, or reduce the scope of the project, deliver less. It can be helpful to take a senior management to discuss the necessary workaround with the client. By the way, some PMs may feel that if the schedule is monitored and the planned dates are met, costs will take care of itself. And for labor-intensive contracts, a strong correlation does exist between schedule and cost. However, to avoid cost overruns, both schedule and cost data should always be closely monitored, and forecasts of schedule and cost performance compared and used as sanity checks against each other. There are detailed lists of schedule and cost metrics in my book. Of course, there are times, depending on the nature and politics of the project, that you might need to adjust the optimal schedule to meet an established or contractual project end date. This might involve accepting a reasonable management challenge of getting more done for less. Also, if you find yourself behind schedule, you may need to impose seemingly drastic measures to control schedule performance. 4 of these are shown here. Such things as external work weeks, extended work weeks, added staff, weekly or even daily schedule reviews, and planning with daily inchstones can be effective in improving schedule performance. Of course, any schedule impacts should be immediately communicated to management and, if appropriate, to the client. No one likes to be surprised. Having participated in hundreds of reviews of government projects of all sizes and complexity, both for contractors and agencies, I must sadly report that only a handful evidenced a satisfactory degree of risk management, reporting, and control. Most PMs and their management barely gave risk lip service, and too few statements of work and requests for proposal required it. This might also be one of the reasons the GitLab survey respondents emphasized operation failures due to rushed or ignored planning. So PMs need to take risks to heart and try to mitigate major risks on their projects before they occur, so they have fewer major issues to deal with during their project's life cycle. Risk can include the possibility of suffering a negative impact to the project, whether it's decreased quality, increased cost, schedule slip, or project failure. Several years ago, I successfully implemented an automated version of this risk process for the GSA FedSim project managers. It had these 5 elements. Employ a logical risk management planning methodology. Identify alternatives to achieve cost, schedule, and performance goals, as well as assist with decisions on budget and financial priorities. Analyze potential risks, identify appropriate responses to risks, and monitor the health of the project, and provide risk information for progress reviews. For each potential risk, assign either a numerical value or green, yellow, red for the likelihood of the risk happening and the impact on project success if the risk occurs. Prioritize these risks and plan on expending the necessary resources to mitigate the most likely and most impactful ones. These are the only ones that should be reported in monthly reviews. This will hopefully keep your senior management from getting into the weeds. Use a risk register similar to this one to track each risk, including a mitigation strategy, responsible party, and status. There are almost 100 project risks and issues described in my book. The last 2 of the 5 challenges I'd like to discuss today are more soft skills. The first, an inability to make sound decisions, is often a source of major project risk. Too many PMs and executives make significant decisions without a thorough analysis and discussion with all interested parties. I've witnessed $100 million bid pursuit as well as design decisions being made in the hallway. Avoid doing this. In addition, while delaying a decision can be demotivating, costly, and unproductive, keep in mind that at other times it can allow you to gather more information and consider new alternatives. Successful IT projects utilize a decision-making approach that follows these steps. Identify the problem or opportunity and key success factors. In other words, what would a successful outcome look like? Get the facts. But at some point, you'll need to stop gathering information and begin accessing it. A brainstorming technique is a useful tool to employ to develop a list of the best alternatives. Spend some time analyzing each alternative, then rate each alternative against the set of success factors and assign a risk level using either a numerical or color value. Select the alternative that most closely matches the desired outcomes and has a medium to low risk. And don't forget to communicate the decision to all stakeholders, and then regularly measure the implementation progress and be open to change of direction if new information comes to light. I've found that making decisions in this way takes a lot of the distracting and potentially misleading subjective emotions out of the decision process. Here's an example of a weighted decision-making matrix for vendor selection. As you can see, the selection criteria are on the first column, and then each vendor is rated against these different selection criteria, either numerically as shown here or with color coding. Just a simple matrix like this can make a huge difference. Too many PMs, and for that matter, managers at all levels don't delegate or listen to bad news. One such executive literally drove me out of a company after 10 years because of the disastrous impact of his inability to listen. Having done over 100 organizational assessments, I've found that there is always someone at the middle level of the organization, and on occasion, even the receptionist, who is aware of at least one of the major problems that wasn't being addressed by management. This is also true on a project. But first, a very quick digression. Many small business government contractors are founded by engineers and scientists who, while experts in their field, have limited experience managing an organization. These growing pains are enormous, especially if the founder is unwilling to gradually relinquish the need to be involved in every single decision. This can also occur in the government when a dual technology track doesn't exist to allow for non-management technical advancement. Unfortunately, the same is often true of PMs. PMs who don't delegate become a single point of failure and aren't able to raise future leaders of the organization. Today's younger staff members usually want to have some ownership in the project they're working on. Absent that, high performers will abandon ship, resulting in mediocre project performance. Like organizational executives, PMs need to be willing to hear bad news without shooting the messenger. This behavior adjustment can take some work, but it pays huge dividends because it usually the problem everyone but the PM knows about that results in project failure. Actively seek client feedback regarding what is going well and not, and really listen. Listen to your teammates too regarding project status and concerns. You can't fix it if you don't know about it. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share just a few of the over 100 lessons from my new book.